Trigger warning. This episode contains discussions of physical assault, sexual assault, and suicide.
I'll do
Ready?
it.
Trigger
I'll
warning.
do it.
Do it.
I'll just do it
Trigger
all.
warning.
Yes.
Trigger warning. This episode includes sexual assault in detail. She was not just an exotic dancer, if you get my drift.
Okay.
And
Lady of the night.
When somebody rolls in after a weekend with a brand new Jimmy, if you can't get yourself up off the floor, you're gonna be a struggle anyway.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode here on Counterpunch. We are just going to put a small disclaimer out there for anyone that has triggers regarding sexual assault or anything like that. So we are just giving you guys a pre-warning so we can avoid those, or you guys can be prepared for those. Shalane, who do we have today?
Well, today I'd like to extend a wonderful welcome. She is an entrepreneur extraordinaire. Her resume is very, very long and attractive. She is a silver level USA boxing coach, as well as a silver level USA boxing aficionado, as well as a stellar mom and wife. Please, everybody, welcome Desrae Richter to our Counterpunch ring.
Hi, Desrae.
Hey, thank you
Hello.
so much for joining us this evening. How are you?
I am fabulous. Thank you so very much for this opportunity. It's just great to be here, and I'm super excited for you ladies just knocking this all over the place.
Heck yeah. Yeah, we are. We're excited too, and we're excited to have you.
Yes.
So when we first connected, Desiree was kind of through like another, boxer, and I got to chit chat with Desiree, and just even like on our first conversation, her story is pretty amazing. We look at a woman, and we could dive into that too a little bit too, like being women in a predominantly male sport, a very masculine sport of boxing. We have to be resilient in and of ourselves, so we can definitely dive into that a little bit. But really, yeah, resiliency. I heard it the first time I talked to you, and I was moved by your story, and I was like, you know what? We got to have her on to talk and share what she's done. So with that, I'm going to let you just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, alrighty. I guess in a sense, when it comes to boxing, I am a huge fan. I grew up watching boxing with my dad, and I love the sport. Back then, they didn't let girls do any like combat training or anything like that.
Oh,
My brother was a wrestler, but I was a good mat girl, and I was a good, they call them the mat dummies back then. But women and girls, we just didn't have those type of sports. Definitely not any hand-to-hand combat or anything like that. But I grew up, we were very aggressive, and we were a very, just very big personality family. And I'm grateful for a lot of that just ability to, just work through the really hard points, because I got hit pretty hard with some early on trauma early on in my life. It's a 20 some odd year history, but I'll keep it really short. When I was just a young girl, I was probably 12, I was going into sixth grade. We went on a family vacation, and it was a great all inclusive resort. The kids got to run crazy and do all of that kind of fun stuff. And very quickly, I made friends with some older kids, and we were just kind of left to our own devices. This was back in the 90s too. I am that old, so. But anyway,
what bothers me is that back in the 90s means you're old now.
Right.
Hey, I've heard 50 is the new 25, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm cresting up on that. I'm looking forward to it. So I'm looking for that one. But I was hanging out with some older kids, and they wanted to play a game of hide and go seek. Unfortunately, I got a really big life lesson at that point in time, not to go away with strangers or with people you don't know. And a young man older than I was, he raped me in the bottom of a stairwell. So I honestly have to be honest with you. I didn't really know what happened. And for a very, very long time, we didn't talk about it. It just really manifested internally. And we didn't talk about it. And I don't know if you remember all those, after school TV specials where, it was always the girl's fault. What were you doing? What were you wearing? Why didn't you say
Mhm.
no? Why didn't you do? I mean, you just didn't talk about it. There just was no place. I mean, it's not dinner table conversation by any means. And, we didn't know how to process it back then. And, it has just gradually taught me over the years, and I didn't tell anybody, just kept plugging along. But unfortunately, I developed a couple of coping mechanisms that really weren't great. I can honestly say that drugs and alcohol, I had an older brother, and that was some really great coping mechanisms. But, you are just expected to keep chugging along. I honestly feel like I guess in a sense, my station in life growing up in a rural community, it was something I could put out of my mind per se and just keep moving through it. But as I got older and then I went off to college, didn't I had some really nasty habits when I went off to college because, I got all of that fun stuff. And then unfortunately, at a different point in my life, I ended up going to the East Coast, working for a nanny as a nanny for a lady. And she was not just an exotic dancer, if you get my drift.
Okay.
And
Lady of the night.
I mean, when somebody rolls in after a weekend with a brand new Jimmy entitled name, you kind of have some questions of where'd you get that? Like,
Great conversation. I'm sure she's just good at talking to guys.
yes. So I can honestly say at that point in time, at 19 years of age, I wasn't quite 19. I was introduced to what they call the real sex industry. And remember, I come from a long line of entrepreneurs, and the whole business model of that, I wasn't okay with that. I'm like, this doesn't, I don't understand how this works. I do all the work, and yet there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that didn't make sense to me. Well, anyway, on October 31st, 1997, I walked into a facility, an establishment that I was told never to go into alone, unattended. And I did because, I was not, I was a teenager. I thought I was Dorothy outside of the land of Oz doing whatever I could want to
What
do.
kind of establishment
And
was this?
well, it's a bar and a strip club, and
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They did a lot of business out of there. Come
Okay.
to find out, so
Okay.
yeah,
I'm so
yeah,
curious now. Don't put them on blast, but wait, this is on the East Coast, right? At this time?
correct. Yes,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. I spent a good chunk of my time in Manhattan, which is it's New York City, but it's really called Manhattan, right? That's
Yeah.
you refer to locals, they call it Manhattan, but yeah, it was on the East Coast,
Okay.
the Big Apple, and yeah, and on October 31st, 1997, I walked into establishment, and unfortunately, I did not walk out of that establishment on my own. I was abducted and held captive for a weekend and raped and sodomized by three men and left in a parking lot.
Stop it.
So
How old are you now at this point?
I am 45 years old. I'll
No,
be
no, no. How
46
old
this
are
year.
you on the state?
I wasn't 19 yet.
So,
Oh my
so you were
goodness.
18, but not quite
Almost, yeah.
19.
Yeah,
Wow.
And you
almost
went
19.
in to
Yep.
this public, but it's still a legal, publicly running business. It's not like some underground
Yeah.
party or something.
No, it was actually a bar, like, and
Yeah.
it was an establishment. It was a club.
And you were abducted
Yeah, I was.
by three men.
Well, it was just the one that took me out.
Okay.
And yeah, and they actually gave me a drink, and I said I wasn't a drinker. I've never been a drinker. Like I said, I preferred drugs. I didn't, I didn't drink, but I preferred other drugs. But they gave me a drink, and I said no, thank you. But then, they're like, oh, but you need to, whatever. And I'm grateful that I only have 5 memories of that night. They're fleeting memories. But it was very damaging by all means. So yeah,
Were you just left to your own accord, or how did you get away, or what was that like?
they left me in a parking lot.
Okay. Oh, you did. I apologize.
Yeah.
I think I
No,
was
you're
so just
fine.
like, oh my gosh.
No,
You did
I
say that.
lost
They
track
left
of
you in the
time.
parking
Yeah,
lot.
no. Yeah, they actually took me back to the parking lot, And what was really odd, and I don't
How
know if it was just because
considerate.
my vehicle was right.
Okay.
It was really odd because they literally left me in the vehicle that was mine. I had a little truck, and I woke up on the back of my tailgate.
Wow.
Okay, so here we are. We're not at a good place. What a young age.
No.
No.
We've got to bring in the resiliency part of the story. So,
Yes.
so what happens? How do we
Well,
pick up from here? Yeah.
well, to be completely honest with you, this is where my faith comes in.
Mhm.
I personally can tell you with wholehearted, I met Jesus Christ that night. I can't tell you much more other than that. Then he picked me up and he carried me to wherever I needed to go. I don't remember a whole ton of all of the little details of I remember being at a hospital. I remember being examined, but other than that, I don't remember all of those details. I remember climbing upstairs on my hands and knees, and there was just a lot of blood everywhere. So and again, the memories of how they all put together, I don't have a logical explanation for the turn of events that happened. I remember seeing some very distorted faces. I honestly remember one of the nurses going like that when I was going through the exam. It was pretty damaging. And then oddly enough, my next memory catches up when I was back at home. And to be honest with you, my mom told me that she called me, or I called one day, and she said that I told her that I was coming home, and I guess I drove myself back to Kansas.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness
And
gracious.
I don't remember any of it. My memory, like I said, I know that it happened October 31st, and because it was Halloween, I'd taken the kids that I was nannying for. We went out trick or treating, and then I went to the establishment, and then there's a couple memories starting from them and there, and then I remember being home for Thanksgiving back in my parents' home.
Okay, so this is a
So
really traumatic event. Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
but what's really, I guess, the resilience come in, right? That's what we're talking about, is the resilience and the support system. Um, when I got home, and it was very traumatic. I'm pretty tore up. But oddly enough, I met my husband January 8th of 1998. And we have been together since January 8th. I was actually the 7th. That was our original meet date. My daughter was born on January 8th, 14 years later after that. But honestly, my husband Donald has been in my life since the beginning. So we have been together. It'll be 2024. We've been married for 24 years, but we've been together since January 7th, 1998. And it's just been a growing that's about the resiliency. That's my support system, is that after men have done some horrendous things to me in my life, I then meet my husband shortly after, and it's been a journey. Boxing came into my life because it was recommended going through a lot of trauma and a lot of those serious, disconnection of getting back in your skin, of boxing. And so boxing was the therapeutic tool that was recommended for me to really build up past the trauma, being triggered and getting really comfortable in that somatic experience again. Because I didn't seek a therapy for a long time. You just, you don't, there's no way to process things like this. And the way the brain works is it just will kind of shut it out. It'll, if you can get past that. So it's kind of a miracle of how our brain will work and process trauma, which is amazing. So, but boxing, that's how it came in. I have a very tumultuous relationship with boxing, I guess you could say. Again, it's that story of resilience. I started boxing as a therapeutic tool, and the boxing community told me that, well, if you're going to box, you should compete. And I'm like, okay, well, how do you do that? So, I mean, I didn't know about amateur boxing. They were like, let's go pro and let's do all of this stuff. And I'm like, this is all expensive. I'm like, and I was working with a kid. He had aspirations of going the distance. And I'm like, okay, well, we live rurally. And so how do you get picked up by a gym? Because it's expensive. So we just started training and doing all of this stuff and creating sparring time with just local people that were willing to put in the effort. We watched a lot of videos. We did a lot of mistakes. We talked to a lot of people, and we just kind of cultivated this small little community as a group that we're learning, and we'd bring people in and we'd learn and we would do these things. I did get a phone call from a promoter, and I actually was supposed to have this exhibition fight. I couldn't even tell you the details, to be honest with you, because it was never, put into fruition, because I stepped in the ring. I was during training, I stepped into the ring without my guard, and there weren't females back then. I mean, not in our community. I mean, there just wasn't a ton of females in the sport at all. And so I was boxing men, I was sparring with men, and there was a gentleman that he just wasn't local, but he came with one of our friends, and I stepped in the ring without a guard, and he was a military veteran, and I'm I'm a pretty fast. I mean, I packed a pretty good punch. We'd been training, I'm like, okay. And he hurt me, as in he hurt me bad. And I had to make a phone call to my husband in the hospital
Oh,
because
wow.
it wasn't lacerated, but my spleen was bleeding from, yeah, the body shot. So I'm like, this therapy, and my husband walked, he's like, really? My son is, less than 2 years old at this point, and he's like, really? He's like, this therapeutic tool, and what's going on, right?
Oh no.
Right. So I learned the lesson of rules of the sport, right? The value of the rules of the sport, as well as good coaching and really important understanding of why you're doing this, right?
Yeah.
And just that it's a sport, and you really have to have purpose. Unfortunately, due to the injury, I never got to compete. It kind of just took me out of it. To be honest with you, that's why I ref and I love being in the ring, because I don't know if I would ever be able to step back into the ring as a boxer. I go to train. It hurts to train. It really, I mean, to push your body to that perspective,
Mhm.
it hurts. And that's why I love working with boxers, because of the grit, determination, the desire, the discipline, to really go the distance. And I just love it. Um, let's see. Unfortunately, the partner that I had when the pandemic hit and everybody had to just stop meeting, stop being around each other, and all of the social distancing and the mask wearing, that was extremely challenging. Number one, I have never been able to wear a mask. I started having panic attacks, because a part of my story is that when I was abducted, is they covered my face.
Yeah.
And so the motion of putting this over my face brought out all of these. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I couldn't walk out in public. And then it also, with everybody else wearing their masks, I couldn't see their faces. And so that brought in all of this distortion of being in those situations where I didn't, I was being hurt or not being able to distinguish faces. And it just brought out so much. So that was a very challenging time. And anybody that had struggled with mental health issues, my heart goes out to people during the time of the pandemic, because it was such a trying time. My sparring partner did not fare well, and he committed suicide.
Oh,
No.
that's sad.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I said that's sad.
That's very
It
sad.
is. I mean, this is where that mental health is really important, and finding the healthy coping mechanisms and the ability to recognize your own self-care. And when you're put in those traumatic situations, and to be able to be resilient and to come through that, it's really just a challenge. And personally, that's where we just have to be vulnerable. We have to be authentic, and we have to be transparent. You ladies asked me, is there anything that I'm not willing to talk about? No, because there is somebody out there that this message is going to resonate with. and they're going to be able to take one step toward healing by hearing something. And that I know.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I share it. That's why I've dedicated where I'm working towards that aspect of my life of good coaching, good encouragement, good championing, understanding how the sport works of any kind, and just really leaning into that community. And it's for the integrity of the sport, because if the sport doesn't have integrity, then the actual boxers, what are they working for?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you want brain damage, I guess,
Oh gosh.
or if you want some injury, I mean, look at the pros, right? Let's seriously, let's look at some of the pros, right?
So yeah, I want to kind of talk about that a little bit. Just, you know, I think it was great whoever recommended you, who put you on to boxing. I feel like it could be very empowering. It's not only good for you. I mean, yours was obviously a freak accident. That's not a norm of people who box. Their spleen doesn't normally get hit like that bad. But I think
No,
it's,
they have weight classes for that. I was
yeah,
boxing somebody that was almost 50, 60 pounds
yeah,
heavier than I was, and he was a
yeah,
man, I'm a woman, I mean, that's totally different. So
yeah. And I think that's great. And so I just, yeah, like, the fact that you were able to take, use boxing as kind of this platform, and you still do, you're a ref, you're a coach, you're still very much active in the USA boxing community. And I think that's amazing because, had this tragic event not happened, you may have never been turned on to this love
mhm.
of boxing now that you have, for the rest of your life and in the community. And I'll call her and she's like, on my way to, whatever national tournament to go ref. And I think it's so amazing where you're at in that community is really empowering and really cool.
It's a really great community, and I really would encourage anyone, if you have any interest, just to come out and learn. I'm working towards that level too, which I time keep. I have been to one national tournament to time keep, but the Kansas City Golden Gloves, which was just a couple weekends ago, is a national advancing pathway, and I did earn my spot to ref in the finals, which was amazing. And I also was given the opportunity to train alongside the Kansas City Golden Gloves president, Chris Walden, and he's like the rated number 2 official in the country as the OIC, and doing those deputy OIC, which is the person who runs the event, right? They make
OIC is
sure,
official in charge.
yes,
Yes.
official in charge. So I'm hoping to take my test this coming summer so that I can elevate into that role as well.
That's
So
really cool. I mean, it really is to take, and you're just like, you're still like, you're not done. Like, you're still moving forward and you're still going on with this. And that's pretty amazing.
I want to be at the 2028 Olympics some way, somehow. If we get the sanction,
It'd be so
I want to be
cool.
at the 2028 Olympics. They're stateside, so whether I maybe I'm cornering a boxer, maybe not. I have a tendency to lean towards I love competition, but competition isn't for everybody, but
Mm-mm.
boxing can be for
I
everybody.
love that. That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, and everybody's like, well, what about self-defense? I do self-defense too, but boxing's a sport, because when it comes to self-defense, that's a completely
Yeah.
different animal. So,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brittany. Sorry.
No,
I keep
you're
cutting
okay.
you off.
You're okay. You're fine. I just wanted to kind of go further into the connection of the trauma that you had in the boxing. So when you have triggers or something, is that something that you're using the boxing to kind of stay ahead of it, or is it when it happens, or is it like, how do you work through those moments?
so I am far enough in my journey that for me, boxing at this point in time is something that gives me the power, because when you're hitting the bag, and I mean, and when you're sparring, when you feel completely in control and confident and capable and powerful, right? Those are in the present moments. And I can't say that I use that during a trigger. When we're triggered, our very first step is we need to maintain not flipping our lid or going into that trauma, and going into those fight, flight, freeze moments. So that's actually where you got the deep breathing. You can do the central nervous resetting, or the grounding and the tapping. Those are the mindfulness exercises I'll use my mantra is I'm okay, I am safe, I am loved, I am cared for. And again, it's a lot of tapping and it's a lot of anxiety management. It really just depends. The boxing aspect is what gives me the fitness, because when I teach boxing or when I teach self-defense, if you're not a fit person and if you live a sedentary life and if you can't get yourself up off the floor, you're you're going to be a struggle anyway. So that's why I really just, advocate for people to be fit in their bodies and be comfortable to be able to. And that's actually something my father passed away during the pandemic of 2020, and he had fallen. And this is actually why I really drive towards the fitness aspect of it. I ran 2 half marathons in 2020, and he fell on the ground. He laid there on the ground for 6 hours and he couldn't get up. And he called me and he's like, Desi. And he asked me, he's like, can you get up off the floor? I'm an athlete. I've always been an athlete. But to be able to sit from a laying position to just standing to your feet, if you have any kind of injury, it's almost impossible unless you have practiced it.
Right.
So this is something that I teach. It's just mobility. And the way our world works, we have become so sedentary. And that's just what I've dedicated, what I really want to help people do is just to be mobile, because sedation is death, in my opinion.
Oh, it
So,
is. It is. And even if you're up, just walking, they say, even if you just walk, I mean, you don't have to, we're not saying, like, that's great. You did the marathons and stuff, but even if you're just, and you're moving or you're walking or you're jogging or you're, maybe doing some yoga, but just not being
Mhm.
sedentary, absolutely, is really critical. Yeah. Set your watch or whatever to get up and to move, stand up. Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, fitness is
Yeah.
you just got to be fit. And your level of fit is your level of fit,
Yeah.
because when it comes to any kind of danger or anything like that, the very first thing that needs to happen is you just need to be aware, right? And most people don't want, they're predatorial. They don't want to work hard for it. They want it to be easy. So the very first thing that we have to be aware of is that we don't want to look like we're an easy target.
Don't be an easy
And
target. Yeah.
don't be an easy target. And
Mhm.
obviously there is a whole, criminology based on how
Right.
people pick their prey. But, random acts of violence, they're when you're fit and when you're healthy, you have a quicker recovery time.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
just
And then
overall better.
piggybacking kind of on what you were saying, like, I get it. Like when we train those exercises, like even just think of a burpee, for example, though, and why everybody
Mhm.
hates them.
Best one
It's
there is.
it's so hard to, even in your most pristine fitness level, to go from up to down to up to, it sounds easy. Or they call them the prison workouts, right? You don't need the equipment. You're in your room, and what are you doing? You're just doing body weight exercises, usually involving up and down, and you'll get in the best shape of your life. And it is hard. It is hard when you're knocked down to get back up quickly, even for people who are in immaculate shape.
Absolutely.
So it is. So it is hard that, you can run, but as soon as you fall, it takes more energy to get back up. I laughed. We did a snowboarding trip, right? And I mean, I was like, oh yeah,
Oh
look at her
no.
face. And so
No.
it is, your feet are buckled in the board. So when you fall, your whole body, it's not like skis. Yeah. And it's so hard to get back up from falling on a snowboard. And we've got like these 6 and 7-year-olds zooming by me, and I'm like, is this real life? And then tell me it is very hard to get back
It's
up.
the coordination and
Yeah.
the when you're putting your body, I mean, it's like back and forth. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that was not a sport I ever wanted to try. No,
A
no.
lot of muscles that we don't normally engage. Yeah, getting up from getting down is definitely is a big one.
It is. And I actually teach a class on Fridays for it's called Get Up and Go. And believe it or not, the number one thing that we practice is sitting in a chair and going from a chair and standing, because believe it or not, in the senior community, the number one accident that happens is when they're on the toilet. And
Okay.
you think about just that frame of mind. Think about, I know bend down and pull up your pants as you're trying to stand up, and now add
Oh,
40 years to it, and not having that strength. And, the older you get, the more sedentary lifestyle you live. And so that's what we practice. We do chair squats, and then we touch our toes and bring our arms up and stand up, because that balance, that equilibrium from that head down to that head up, and trying to do your arm pulls at the same time. And
oh, it
that's
makes
actually
sense.
that's how my dad fell. So he was,
Really.
yeah, so
Well,
he
good
had
for
he
you.
had
And she
gotten.
took that. You took that, and now you're Desiree, I don't know if you're listening to yourself, but you take these things that happen and you immediately turn it into like a positive, and a powerful move. So my applause to you.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. I just don't want people to, I can't give them this, I can't give them what I have, but I can give them opportunities. And that's really, I have a website called shinetheexperience.com, and it's just finding your identity. And it's about your potential, and we only have one life to live.
Oh, I love that.
That's amazing.
We will absolutely have a link to that website also in our credits. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, and I just love that, yeah, that you're going out and you're sharing it with other people, and you're taking these things that have happened to you that haven't been so great, and you're really putting it out there for other people to learn from, and being an example, excuse me, to others. And it's just a wonderful thing. And I think like one thing that is really coming through from you is not just the resiliency, but it's all the things like you handled it perfectly. The support system, you had faith, you had literally from Shalene's book as she's talking,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's round one. That's round two. That's round
That's
three.
why you're walking,
And
you're living my book,
yes,
chapter by
I love
chapter.
that.
literally.
Here she
I need to read
is.
that book. I'm
There
like,
she's
I
got
need to
all-
bring that. I need to
That's her
read
on
that
the
book.
cover. We just didn't tell anyone. I
That's
love it. And I
amazing.
love how my round two is ditch the why. And I love, we've been chatting to you, and some very valid, horrible stuff has happened. And never once have you been like, why did this have to happen to me? You never, you're just like, hey, you know what? This happened and I moved on and I'm dealing with it. And this is what it feels like. And this is what I can do. And you went straight from to doing stuff proactive. So again, you've got it.
It's a grieving process.
It is.
I mean, again, my trauma, is well over 20 years, and it's not been pretty, ladies.
Yeah.
It's been ugly. And
It is. Yeah.
I got to be honest with you, the worst part is that my children have journeyed this with me. And you want to talk about resilience, it's my children that are the most resilient,
Mhm.
because they have been, my children and my husband that have lived this walk with me through surrendering and grieving the trauma. I may not ask why now, and I probably wasn't ever really a why person, because I do go because I want to fix it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like I'm not a person that sits inside of that, but I have learned that that's what the heart of compassion is. I can't take that from you. I have to sit here with you in it, and I'm willing to do that, but also you have a choice. How long are you going to sit there? And that actually is the grieving process. I mean, there's steps of grieving from denial all the way to the acceptance. And that's where we learn who we are and who our identity is and who our greatest empowerer is. And on the other side, you know, what all good things can come from it. I I truly do believe 100% that, I mean, I can't not believe that if I believe that all things were created for the good and to the glory of God, even the tragedies,
All of it. Yeah.
there
Yeah.
there has to be a point of, and there's no reason why. There's just bad things and bad people in the I mean, we're people,
I love
we're
it.
people.
I really enjoy you taking the time to chat with us
Yeah.
tonight. We have this, I know you will be, that you are already an inspiration. And I know this is sad to say, but I know her story is probably more relatable than a lot of people will admit. Your story is probably not as rare at all.
It's not.
It's not going to be rare as a young 19-year-old, 18-year-old woman going into a nightclub and something happening. I'd be willing to bet that's extremely effing common.
Yeah.
So I
It
think
is.
this is as you put, this should be a dinner table conversation because it's happening weekly, nightly, everywhere, every city, every country. This is happening, and yeah. So thank you for
Anywhere
sharing
I'm
this.
at dinner, it's dinner table conversation. I can tell you that. So
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on and chatting with us and really being an inspiration and just really giving us some insights. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so
thank you
much.
for having me. It's been a pleasure, and it's great.
You did
Thank
great.
you.
Keep us posted on all your. I'm so excited. Yeah, we're gonna
Yeah.
see you in the Olympics, dude.
Yeah.
Officiating,
That'll be so
officiating or
awesome.
cornering.
If
You
I
heard it
say
here
it, then it's
first.
gonna have to come. Right. If I say it, that means I'm gonna hold myself accountable for it, and I'm gonna keep working towards it. Right. That's how we breathe things into existence, and
There you
we
go.
shoot for
We'll
the
be
stars, and we'll
watching.
hit the moon.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be watching. We'll be looking for you. So, but thanks again, Desrae. We really appreciate you coming on, opening up, and sharing your story with us. It's amazing, and you're amazing, and thank you for all you're doing for everyone out there and all the lives that you're touching. And it's great.
Thank you for having me.